My name is Aaron Papelka. Joining me today is Christopher Mccullough, and we're both from Salesforce, and welcome to Salesforce Develop Your Design. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join our session, and also thank you to Nextech for having us at Navigate this year. This is what we're going to cover over the next 35 minutes. First, we're going to take a few minutes to introduce ourselves, our experience, and our backgrounds, as well as a little bit about Salesforce and what we do in our jobs. Then I'm going to take 10 or 15 minutes to talk about the design process, how this works in general, and how this works in Salesforce. Then I'll hand things over to Christopher. He'll take some time to talk about the development process, both in general and at Salesforce. And finally, we'll talk about how designers and developers work together to create digital products. We want to make sure that we leave time for questions at the end, so feel free to post any questions that you have in the chat. We'll get to as many as we can at the end of this presentation, but we're also going to leave you with our contact info. If we don't get to all questions here, you can reach out to us after this presentation and we can answer them there. And also, lastly, this meeting or presentation will be recorded, so you can revisit these slides if you would like to. So let's get started with an introduction about ourselves as well as Salesforce. Christopher?
Right, so hi, my name is Christopher Mccullough. I am a lead UX engineer working at Salesforce. I am located in Indianapolis. I'm actually in Brownsburg. I have worked at Finish Line. They're out on their corporate headquarters is out on the east side. I've worked for, done some work for GLS, Global Leadership Network, ExactTarget, IUPUI. I had my first job there, and now here I am at Salesforce. Aaron?
Awesome, thank you. And my name's Aaron Papelka. I'm a lead UX designer, also known as a user experience designer, currently based in San Francisco, California. I've been with Salesforce for about 4 years. Before Salesforce, I was in New York City at an agency called Huge. My primary clients at Huge were Google and Walmart. I've also worked in the startup space, for example, at a company called Reserve in dining and payments. But before we jump into our individual roles and responsibilities, let's quickly get a lay of the land of the Salesforce ecosystem. Salesforce was founded 20 years ago in San Francisco as a cloud-based solution to help sales teams better connect with customers. And since then, it's grown into a large global company of over 50,000 employees, including a major office in Indianapolis. Now, there's a bunch of different clouds within Salesforce, things like sales, service, marketing, commerce, and more. And these different clouds allow different users in different industries to perform their job duties in a secure, scalable, and enjoyable manner. Christopher and I both work on the Salesforce Marketing Cloud product. And that product looks something like this. Salesforce Marketing Cloud is the world's #1 marketing platform, and it creates, we work to create products like you see on the left-hand side of this wheel here. Things like Journey Builder, Interaction Studio, Email and Mobile Studio. And these products empower our marketers to drive engagement with their customers, bringing companies and customers together. Now, just so everyone understands on this call, the tools that we're creating and the tools that you'll see later in this presentation that we've worked to design and develop are sometimes referred to as enterprise software. They are tools that people use to do their jobs, typically using them between 10 and 40 hours a week. And it empowers people to use the products that we make to do their job well and effectively. What that does for their end customer is something like this. Our customer is always connected. They're always on. They drive their own conversation as they move throughout their day. And in every interaction between our customer and companies is an opportunity to deepen the connection between a brand and the customer. And this is what Marketing Cloud supports. We support the orchestration and the connected touch points of a customer journey, from things like service to marketing across different devices, mobile, tablet, web, to sales and commerce, all through different touch points. And the tools that we work to create let marketers reach the right person through the right channel on the right device at the right time. So let's take a look at the design process that goes into some of these Salesforce Marketing Cloud products. At Salesforce, we practice what is known as user-centered design. It's the process that we practice to design the products that I showed above. Now, a positive user experience lives at the intersection of wants, needs, and constraints for technology, for business, and for users. And it is our job as UX designers to act as facilitators and collaborators for different stakeholders in these circles to help them give input and to start to center in on the center of this Venn diagram, which is a good user experience. We help each one of these roles and responsibilities, or each one of these circles, evaluate their risk, impact, confidence, and effort for any given feature, problem, or idea. And we work as collaborators and facilitators to bring a product from an idea in somebody's head to a sketch on a napkin to an actual product that's put out in the real world. Now, this is the product design process in general. But how we do this at Salesforce is we sometimes kind of refer to this as our three-legged stool of roles that exist within Salesforce. And user experience, UX, is one of the disciplines that makes up our three-legged stool of product design. We work as the advocate and the voice of the user next to people in other departments, such as engineers and developers, like Christopher, product managers, and UX designers and researchers, like myself. And these three roles come together: the product, in our case, the Marketing Cloud product. How we do this is an iterative process. It takes some time, and as designers, this is what I love to do. This is what we do in our daily lives. So let's take a look at some of the tools and techniques that we use to execute on user experience design. We begin our design process with planning and prioritization, helping to weigh where we can improve our product and make the largest impact on the user or on the business. As designers, this is where we can steer the ship the most, and we are the loudest voice in planning and prioritization sessions to be advocates for our user. What you see on this slide are photos from workshops that I've ran, doing things like using Post-its to prioritize ideas, stack ranking items, sketching collaboratively on a whiteboard, but most importantly, bringing together multiple disciplines to talk about wants, needs, and constraints, and to work out a roadmap for a product. In here, in some of these images from sessions that I've run, we have engineers, we have product managers, we have UX designers, we have researchers, and importantly, we have the voice of the user, all coming together to create a product, the Salesforce product, and facilitating collaboration amongst those roles. Now, at this point in the design process, ideas are very nebulous. There's a lot of sketches on a whiteboard. There's a lot of Post-its. There's a lot of ideas in people's heads. And it is our job as UX designers to take these inputs and help to define a problem and start to move along in the design process. We use tools like you see on this slide to take an abstract idea that's in somebody's head or maybe a group of people's heads and start to make it feel a little bit more concrete. Things like user journeys, sitemaps, or user flows to help define the problems that people can talk about and put them on a page and start to kind of map out how they might affect the end user of our products. While defining a problem, we also work very closely with research, and we use their input to get more feedback from users about the direction that we're going and validate that we're going in the right direction. What you see on the bottom right of this slide represents something that we use called personas. These are inputs from research that we use in the design process to inform us about what our users are like, what jobs they want to do, and how they use our product in their daily lives. From here, once we've planned where we want to go as a team or as a company, and we've defined a problem and we have something a little bit more concrete, kind of a path of where we want to go, we move into our design phase. And this is where we spend the most of our time, or the majority of our time as UX designers. We use tools like sketching with a pencil and paper or a whiteboard to get our ideas from a conceptual diagram like you saw on the last slides to something that might look like an interface. And we can start to see some of our abstract ideas or some of the team's abstract ideas start to take shape. We slowly start to raise the fidelity of these designs, creating artifacts known as wireframes, which you see in the bottom left of this slide, to represent the core ideas crucial to the product that we're working on. During this time, we're constantly iterating as designers, and it's important to validate that we're broadly going down the right direction. So we use tools like user research and testing to validate hypotheses that we have with real users of our product. The greatest skill you can have as designers at this point in the design process is not being too married to any single idea. We need to be ready to iterate all the time, get feedback from somebody representing the business or technology or the users, and iterate on the design path that we're taking to make sure that we're meeting their goals. Now, the sketches that you saw on the last slide, they're great, they're fun sketches, but they don't look like a fully designed interface yet. We're not going to show a sketch to an end user. So what we do during our design process is we use a system called the Salesforce Lightning Design System. This is a design system that was developed in-house by Salesforce and is a framework of components and how they behave. It allows us as designers to quickly raise fidelity from sketches or wireframes, like you saw on the last page, to full fidelity mock-ups with consistency, efficiency, clarity, and security. We also use a process called atomic design, which is what I'm representing in the bottom right of this slide, moving from small parts, something like a piece of text or a button, to larger parts like a group of buttons or a modal, to the largest part, which would be an entire page or a grouping of pages. But using a design system like this helps us quickly move from a sketch into some interfaces that feel relatively real. Now, Salesforce Design System is free. It's open source. It's available for you all to check out after this presentation if you choose to do so. You can look at the code. You can download a sketch kit and play around with it. And there are many other design systems as well. Google has a famous one called Material Design. It's something really good as a designer to be familiar with design systems and how they work, because they allow you to quickly mock up ideas and make them feel real. And they're also something that we use very heavily in our day-to-day life. So at this point, we have some designs that we've planned and prioritized. We've defined our problem. We've made some designs that are hopefully solving that problem. We've iterated on them a bunch of times. And we have a prototype that's feeling relatively real. And it's time to write some actual code. So this is where development support comes in. As designers, we've been working closely with developers during our design process so far, so they should be very aware of what we've been working on, what we've produced, and they should be ensuring that it's feasible. We typically provide them with some sort of deliverable to represent the thing that they need to actually go make. This might be a prototype using a tool such as InVision, or it might be static screens in a work tracking tool like Gus or Jira. These prototypes are our output as designers to represent the thing for the people who are going to write the code to build it. We also participate in what's known as sprint ceremonies, working with developers to understand how we can break out different chunks of a product to build it in a modular fashion. One of the ways that we spec our products is using deliverables like you see on this slide. These are sometimes referred to as annotated mock-ups. These are usually attached to a work ticket, and I work closely with developers and with product managers to create these annotations, make sure they're attached to the right ticket, and an interface might behave when a user takes different actions, maybe when they make different errors, when they give different inputs, and basically all states that our interfaces should be in, and how it should behave, and how that end user should be to, or how that end experience should be to a user. Now, something we do a lot of at Salesforce, this doesn't happen at every company, but it does happen here, is we work to empower the teams that empower us through things like sales and narrative presentations. We frequently use storytelling as a tool to share a demo, or to speak with a potential customer, or maybe to create a presentation, like for our yearly conference at Dreamforce. This is an important part of the design process to create deliverables and demos that can be seen on the main stage of Dreamforce, like you see in the top left here, or maybe in the top right, used in a sales meeting with a potential client looking to buy our Marketing Cloud software. And finally, it's time to release a product. But once a product is released, our job is not done as designers. This is an iterative loop. Once we have a product in the wild, we continue to use tools to get inputs on how users are enjoying and using our tool. We continue to work with the research team to get feedback from users as well. And we're constantly iterating on our designs to continue making small changes or sometimes large changes to improve on the things that we didn't get right in our first release. In the bottom left of this slide, for example, you can see a product that we use called Idea Exchange. This is a tool that lets customers submit ideas for features, feedback on existing ones, and vote on features that others have submitted. This is something that we're constantly looking at after we release a feature, and feeds back into the first step of our design process, where we take ideas and we plan and prioritize and start to define the problems that we might want to solve. Now, this is an end-to-end design process that we take as designers. And like I said, this is a loop that's continuously going over 1, 3, 6, 12-month cycles. And this moves from phases of discovery through delivery, looking at how we move from planning to problem definition, design and iteration, into development support, supporting sales teams, and supporting release and measurement. But what tools do we use to do this? Now, as a designer, I have a lot of tools in my toolkit, and every designer has a different set of tools. The icons that you see on this wheel are a sampling of some of the tools that I use. And this is going to differ a lot from company to company. Different companies use different tools. But we use visual design tools very heavily, things like Sketch or Figma or Illustrator. We use prototyping tools very heavily, things like InVision or Principle. And we also use collaboration tools very heavily, like Slack or Google Slides or OmniGraffle. And the most important thing that we use is pencil and paper or a whiteboard and a marker to sketch things out. This selection of tools are the tools that I use most commonly at Salesforce. We design using a combination of Sketch, Abstract, and InVision. We use InVision to create our prototypes. We collaborate heavily using Slack, Google Docs, and Google Slides. And like I said, we importantly use pencil and paper to sketch things out. This is going to be a different set of tools from designer to designer and from company to company. And it's up to you to find out what tools you like the most. And it's also, depending on what role you end up in, you might be asked to use different tools. But I would encourage you to check out many tools, and there's plenty more that you don't see on this slide, to try them out, see which ones you like, and kind of see how they might inform your design process. Hand things off to Christopher, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about the development process.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Okay, so just like design, the dev process is pretty standard. Depending on how big or small your company is, as well as your seniority and expertise, that will decide how involved you are through the various stages of planning and design. But at the root level, you have to figure out what you're building and how, build and document it, test and review it with stakeholders, release it, and maintain it. Ideally, you'd be working closely with a designer throughout that whole process. So first, you need to know what the problem is that you're solving when you're getting ready to build anything. What is it you need to build at a minimum? And then what's coming next so you can position yourself for that. Also, you need to take stock of what resources you have, like people, tech, money, time. You rarely get to decide on these things, but it's good to at least know them and take stock of them. So find out who's going to be doing the actual design at this point and start building a rapport with them. So let's examine this dev process with a real world problem. Aaron has focused a lot on design, specifically at Salesforce, and I'm going to focus on something that you might be more familiar with. This problem is near to my heart, and this is the problem that I am tired of starving in Minecraft. So farming, cooking, and eating are not where my interests lie. At a minimum, I want to build a farm where I can just walk up to a chest, grab cooked food, and go. So thinking more long-term, I'd like to farm enough to sell the excess to others on my realm. I'd also like to filter out feathers and collect eggs. Super long-term, I want to hook it up to a series of ovens to cook it for me, so when I collect it, I collect cooked chicken and I get XP. So when I'm evaluating my resources, I have to decide, should I use redstone? Do I need help? Do I have enough resources to build the farm? How long is it going to take? So in the dev process, when you've got your requirements down, you know your tech and your resources, you know who your designer is, it's time to do prototyping and technical design. Don't reinvent the wheel. What is the standard way to solve the sort of problem you're trying to solve? What libraries and frameworks are available to you, such as Salesforce Lightning Design System? Build a prototype in a sandbox environment to find out the hard parts. If you were trying to break or sabotage what you're building, how would you do that? Can you protect against that? Will the chosen method or strategy work well with the design? So talk shop with your designer to make sure that you're on the same page. Oftentimes at this point, if you share a working prototype with your designer, it'll change and inform the design because it'll help them think through the design in ways they didn't before. So with my farm, I don't have to reinvent this wheel. the easiest place to find designs is to go look at some YouTubers. So to build the prototype, I'm going to hop into a creative world and try out a few different designs and really understand what makes them tick. I want to choose a future-proof method that doesn't rely on obscure mechanisms that are likely to go away. My designer in this case is a combination of myself and the city planning ordinances in the town I'm in. I know my farm needs to fit within a certain space and be attractive, so I make sure the methods I'm prototyping can conform to that. It can't be huge, it can't be, it has to fit and look good. Okay, so you've prototyped everything out, you know what you're building, you have solid late stage designs from the designers, it's time to actually build it. Clean as you go. There's no time you'll understand your code better than the moment after you write the code. So clean it up now if you can, but you have to know when good enough is good enough. Document everything. What gave you trouble? What confused you the most? In as brief a manner as you can, clearly describe how everything actually works. Make sure you're sharing with your designer as you go. You should be having syncs to show things working and get design changes early when they're easiest to implement. All right, so I've got my design, now I build it. And immediately the design changes to incorporate some stairs to make things look better and maintenance easier. When I discover in the real world, I have to get up on top of the thing, so we add some stairs. Once I've got it built, I want to save all of my mine data in a way that is easy to find again. So just grab a book in game, explain to myself how it works, where to get more info, and put that book in an item frame on the actual machine. Now in a year when a creeper blows up next to it or Mojang changes some little mechanic that breaks the whole thing, I can load all that info back in my brain as quickly as possible. All right, so you're done implementing your prototype and you think you're ready to launch. You've been working closely with the designer and keeping stakeholders up to date throughout the process. So now you get everything together that you have and give it a final run through and ask questions. Consider doing beta testing with some users who have never seen it before. You want to be as sure as possible before you release it to the public. So during the final inspection of my chicken farm, here you can see catastrophe struck when someone, assuming that a wall was just a wall, destroyed a block and unleashed Chickenmageddon, with chickens spraying out everywhere. So see, user testing is great. Now I can put glass there instead of a solid block so it doesn't happen again. This is why you do quality assurance and testing. So final testing is done. You have your design and other stakeholder approval, and you've done your due diligence. It's time for product launch, moment of truth. So here I hang my sign on the door and let the world know I'm open for business. My chicken farm is in place, inside of the shop and ready to go. I can grab my stacks and head off on my adventures. So now after that, periodically I need to check my shop and see if my chest is overflowing and collect those diamonds. I see immediately that lightning has struck my roof. I'm gonna have to fix that. I also get some user feedback that potential customers are confused on which chests to leave money in. So that's a great opportunity to improve things. So I put up some signs with item frames to help explain things. And of course, now I can grab my stacks of chicken and keep questing without starving to death. Okay, so I should talk briefly about what tools I use at Salesforce. A vast majority of the code I write is written in JavaScript. This includes both the server-side code as well as the client-side or the browser code. I write most of that code using Sublime text. I do most of my image manipulation in Sketch and even use JavaScript to write Sketch plugins for designers to use. And I heavily utilize the Mozilla Developer Network. It's an amazing resource for learning coding and referencing JavaScript and HTML and CSS. You absolutely must learn and use source control, such as Git. GitHub is the easiest way to get started there. And I do a ton of build automation work in the terminal. So get comfortable in the terminal and learn to script. It's like having magic powers. Nearly all of the websites I build end up being hosted on something called Heroku. For my needs, they have reasonable and scalable hosting solutions. And then I use Brave because I like getting paid to browse the internet, and I like DuckDuckGo. So, okay, so we're gonna move on to how designers and developers work together. And along that, so this here that you see is a classic cartoon of problems that occur when you have breakdowns in communication. So you can see at the beginning, there is something that the customer has described, like, hey, they have this idea, they want this thing to happen. The project leader kind of doesn't really understand it super well. When they hand it off to the designer's like, but the swing won't be able to go through the tree. We're gonna have to like cut a hole and you're gonna have to support it. And then the dev's like, I don't understand what in the world you're talking about. And they have some, they make a swing like wrapped around a tree trunk. And then it gets sold as this amazing armchair hanging from a tree, all the way. And you see at the end what the customer really actually needed. So this is like a game of telephone. What happened here is a communication breakdown. No one checked their understanding with other people throughout the process. It's very simple to fix, but it's not easy to fix, and it takes hard work and dedication for good communication from everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Christopher. And on this slide, I wanted to just kind of add a couple of bullet points to that around collaboration and communication. We looked at the design process. We looked at how this works in general, how this works in Salesforce. We looked at the development process and the steps that developers take to write and release products. And one thing that we kept talking about while we were going through this was kind of hammering home the idea of collaboration between different teams, different people, and potentially different departments. As a designer, it's key to collaborate early and often with product managers, engineers, and users. This kind of makes up that three-legged stool that I showed at the beginning of the presentation. But collaboration early and often with different departments and different people will help you get the best ideas from everybody and make sure that you're broadly aligned and going down the right path. It's also important to get different roles involved at all stages of the design process. Don't just get engineers involved in your design process when you're ready to hand off a pixel-perfect 60-screen prototype. Have them involved in your initial planning and prioritization phases. Have them putting Post-its on a whiteboard and sketching with you on a whiteboard. Getting their input and getting input from everybody as early as possible will help get alignment as early as possible between teams. And communicate across departmental silos. Different companies are structured differently. Sometimes UX and engineering sit very close. Sometimes there can be a silo between them. But it's our job as designers to not just be the voice of the user, but also to be the facilitator across departments and to work to get engineers, product managers, designers, and users all talking together and understanding kind of the wants, needs, and constraints that are coming from each side to help prioritize and attack the right problems. Now, we can collaborate in a couple of different ways. Sometimes we'll talk about synchronous collaboration, synchronous meaning taking place at the same time. I showed some slides earlier in this presentation that showed workshops that I run that typically go 3 to 5 days and will happen in a room together. This can take place as a one-off meeting, sketching with engineers and PMs on a whiteboard. It could take place in an offsite or in a 5-day workshop. But regardless, working together and sketching together is a fast way to help different people get their ideas on paper or on a whiteboard and to prioritize together. Now, obviously, this is very difficult to do with COVID. You can use many digital tools to do synchronous collaboration. For example, here we can see a screenshot of myself working with a developer looking at a ticket in Gus or Jira and kind of doing a little code along where we can just ask each other questions. He can write some code, I can look at it. I can share some designs, he can look at them. We can reference this ticket using a combination of Google Hangouts and sharing our screens is a fast way to collaborate remotely when we can't be together. And there's also a lot of really great tools for synchronous remote collaboration, even to do things like design or prioritization. What you see here is a product called Mural, but things like Figma, Sketch, and InVision all support or will soon support real-time collaboration where multiple people can be in the same dock doing design work. You can have PMs helping you. You can have other designers helping you to do design, design work together in one doc, kind of seeing each other's mice move around and moving things. The GIF that you see here is an example of a prioritization exercise that took place remotely, but you could also be doing design work, sketching things or creating wireframes remotely together as well. Collaboration can also take place asynchronously. You know, one person can say something, the other person can respond to it a few hours or a few days later. And there's a lot of great tools to do this as well. I referenced some of them in kind of my wheel of tools toward the end of my section earlier in this presentation. One that we use a lot of is Slack. Slack is a really good tool to collaborate with engineers. Designers can share designs. Engineers can share code snippets very easily. And it's a great way to create threaded conversations asynchronously and ask a lot of questions of each other. Also, InVision, which is currently the, I would say, the standard for prototyping in the UX world, is great for collaboration, allowing people to comment on prototypes that you've created, ask questions about behaviors or why there is something on the page that you placed there, and have communications and collaboration about your designs, answering questions as you go. You can see here somebody can drag a little dot onto your design, ask a question about it, and you can respond at your convenience. Work tracking is a very important thing that engineers and designers use in their daily life. What you see here is a screenshot of a Jira ticket. Jira is a work tracking tool where work items are broken down and engineers use them to write their code and create their product. This also facilitates collaboration where designers can chime in if there's a question on the ticket about how some behavior might work, or if they need to attach other designs to the ticket. And then finally, things like we're using right now, Google Slides and Google Docs are a great way to collaborate using the comments feature, allowing people to draw boxes and arrows, create diagrams and charts in a slide together, or ask comments of each other asynchronously. So today, we looked at the design process, we looked at the development process. We took a look at how we can take abstract ideas, bring different people with different experiences and backgrounds together, take their abstract ideas and make them into something a little bit more concrete, like a sitemap, and hand that off to an engineer to create something even more concrete, like a site architecture. We looked at how we can take user journeys and user flows and convert them into high-level product architecture. But all of this is facilitated by collaboration amongst roles and making sure that as designers, we're facilitators for the people that are working with us and next to us in the design process. And this allows us to take these abstract ideas, move through our design and development process, and finally create products that users know and love. So I want to make sure that we have some time for questions. Also, here's our contact info. Feel free to reach out to us via email or LinkedIn after this presentation if you have any other questions about design and development at Salesforce.
We have 2 minutes. So let's see, some questions. I'll just do a quick run through. Someone made a comment, sadly, you can't hook up a super smelter to a storage system and keep the XP. Well, that's why you make a furnace array and then let all the furnaces fill up and then go through and harvest and get all your XP. And then you can route the overflow into a storage system. What is the best part of your job? I really like the flexibility that Salesforce has to offer. Family is really important to me. So Salesforce has a lot of flexibility there, so I can still spend a lot of time with my family. How about you, Aaron?
I think the best part of my job, I just love the design process in general. I think it kind of uses so many different parts of your brain. I really like the fact that one day we might be sketching something on a piece of paper or a whiteboard, but the next day we're creating higher fidelity mock-ups, or maybe one day I'm creating a logo, for example. It's always something new and it's always something different, and it keeps kind of work fresh and exciting. So I love the process in general.
Cool. Is Sublime text better than VS Code? If it's better for you. I mean, it really depends on which one you like. Sublime text has tons of plugins and things that I've been using it for 13 years now. VS Code is rather new. I've checked it out. It's great. It can do some really amazing things. So I would say check them both out. Let's see. How do you use Sketch? Aaron, could you comment on where you think people should get started there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sketch has a free trial that you can download from their site. The name of the company that makes Sketch is called Bohemian Coding, and Sketch is the product. If you want to get the free trial, it's definitely worth checking out. Also, be sure to check out Salesforce Lightning Design System. Our Sketch kit is free. Like I said before, it's free, open source, and it's a kit that you can play around with in Sketch. Also, there's plenty of other design system kits that you can check out. Material design would be one that comes to mind, but that you can use in Sketch and kind of use the components to start building your own pages, your own user flows, that sort of thing.
So we've got, what do you think is the best thing on Google to create sites and designs? You can do, as Aaron said, you can do a lot of mock-up and collaboration on Google Sites or Google Slides. Is that what it's called? But I don't know if Google has a lot of good tools. They have Google Sites, but I don't know if they have good tools for creating websites and designs.
I do a little bit of design work in Google Slides. It's sometimes difficult to create designs that look realistic, but it is good for wireframing. It's a great tool to draw boxes and arrows. It's a great tool to make things like a concept map or a site map to kind of illustrate a point. And it's really good because it lets people collaborate on that. You can have two people working on the same slide. Sometimes I'll use Google Slides to actually make interfaces that look like interfaces, but it is much easier and faster to do using something like Sketch. The only time I'll do that is if it's absolutely necessary to work with somebody who doesn't have access to Sketch.
Yeah. And I know we're 1 minute, 2 minutes over now. I don't know if we're allowed to just keep going, but we have a question. Aaron, what makes you most happy in your job success?
What makes me most happy in my job success? That's a good question. I think the thing that makes me happiest is I really like numbers metrics. I love seeing a product go live, watching our analytics kind of light up as it's going live, and then seeing how people are using it, seeing what we got right, but then also kind of seeing what we can improve upon. Yeah, that's makes the whole process worth it to actually see something ship.
And then the last question was, why did you choose to participate in this program? And thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming, by the way. I know a lot of people have to drop off now. So for me personally, I chose because close to home, Indiana, it's where I live, born and raised all my life. I lived within walking distance of downtown, and so in Indianapolis. So it's nice for me to be able to give back a little bit to Indiana and participate in the community. And I like to teach. I taught at IUPUI for a while. I'm a Sunday school teacher right now. So I like the sort of teaching, interacting. How about you, Aaron?
And for me, I talked to Jill. I love the Nextech program in general. I love the mission, and I think Navigate's an awesome event. And I'm also just very excited about UX design and the design process in general. Any chance to share it is one that I'm going to take. I really like being able to talk with people about design, and I hope I got some people excited about design because I do really feel strongly and passionately about the UX design process.
All right. Well, we're way over. Thanks for coming, everyone. It was fun.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Have a good day.